Steve Reis does it dooms. How you doing, Steve?
Doing great. Thank you for having me.
Let's start off. Where'd you grow up?
So I was actually born in Canada, and I grew up mostly in a little town called Tecumseh in Ontario, suburb of Windsor, kind of near Detroit, actually.
What's it like growing up there? How did you get exposed into the music?
Growing up, I started playing guitar when I was in about 8th grade, and I really got into Nirvana, really inspired by Kurt Cobain and just wanting to play guitar, and rented an acoustic guitar. Ended up switching to electric pretty soon after, and played for a couple years, had lessons, but I really wasn't liking it. It's like I wanted to just like learn how to play Nirvana, learn how to play songs, and they were sitting me down with like a theory book and you know, trying to actually read music and play that way. And it just really wasn't my thing. We tried, I think we switched teachers once. I mean, my parents were really good about it, like kind of giving me the opportunity to try and do it. I kind of stopped doing it, just kind of put it aside, but I had learned enough, like a year of guitar, year and a half, you can kind of get playing a little bit. You can get things under your hands. You can play some songs, figure them out myself. And it was just kind of a struggle. And so I ended up quitting. And that was probably around 8th grade. And into 9th grade, I started to make some new friends. And for whatever reason, there was this scene in just the town I grew up in where everybody was into like the Misfits and Danzig and Sam Hain and just the whole Glenn Danzig thing. And so I made a bunch of friends. We were all just into that. And over time, we just kind of, hey, let's start a band. It's like one of my friends was a drummer, and him and I actually, when I had first started playing, had played a little bit together and stuff. We'd been friends for a while. Then another friend, I was just like, well, I can play guitar good enough. I could maybe teach you how to play bass. And then my other buddy was going to sing. And so we just started messing around and learning Misfits songs and Danzig songs, which eventually led me to discovering Black Sabbath. Somehow, which led to Sabbath songs, which then, I think one of my friends, Steve, he had an older brother-in-law who had exposed him to kind of, more of Pantera, maybe a bit of Crowbar and stuff. And really it was when that Second Down album came out. That was really the gateway for me and what got me into doom metal in general. And in the interviews of that era, Phil and Pepper and Jimmy were all talking about, and Kirk talking about Witchfinder General and Pentagram and all these St. Vitus, like these classic traditional doom bands that had influenced them. And so I really became obsessed with that Second Down record, and really from there started exploring, like learning about Pentagram and St. Vitus and Trouble and obviously Crowbar and I Hate God and all the other bands the guys were involved with, COC. And that was kind of my initial exposure to the scene. And for that we're talking, I guess like I said, around 2002, 2003.
What do you think are some pieces of gear for getting that quintessential doom sound?
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a big collector of gear, and I've got way more than I need or can use. And I think in doing so, you almost start to feel like none of it matters quite as much as everyone says it does, in some ways. You can get all these different tones from these different amps and pedals and guitars. But, I think a humbucker, a guitar with humbuckers is probably fair to say that if you're going for like quintessential doom, that's going to be important. I usually tell people just, I should probably say, go get a Woodrite and, we'll get a Warlord. And that is probably what you should get. But, I think people starting out on a budget, getting an Epiphone SG or an Epiphone Les Paul or something like that, that's just a very simple classic guitar that's been around and in the genre for decades and will continue in the genre till the end of time, right? People will be playing Les Pauls and SGs. So I think as just a guitar that's going to work for the genre, I think you're pretty good there. Scale length has been interesting to see that evolve over time, kind of as we've talked. Like most guys were using 24 3/4 back in the day. You've seen that get longer over time, 25 1/2. A lot of people are playing these days for the lower tunings just to keep more tension. And then baritones at 27 and 27 1/2 and 28. Although it's interesting, I feel like within doom, at least within the circle of doom bands that are popular, it seems like most people still stick between 24 3/4 and 25 1/2. I think as you get longer and longer in scale, you kind of you gain clarity and kind of trim down the low end a little bit, whereas looser strings and shorter scales, you end up kind of with more mid-range and low mids and a more open sound. And so it's interesting, right? Because you see like John and Conan and playing drop F with like a Les Paul custom 24 3/4 scale. You see the Slowmatics guys playing SGs, and we got David in Slowmatics is playing a Revelator actually recently, one of our Woodrites. And again, even Mike and Yob, you know, played Les Paul. And they're in A standard, right? And he's played Les Pauls, and I think maybe the Monsons were longer scale, and his Dunables maybe 25.5. But with the channel, and I'll run Q&As a lot, and it's interesting to see the interest in baritones and longer scales, but yet within the genre seems to stick to the shorter scale stuff. It's just an interesting observation I've made. Obviously, I'm a big fan of loud amps, and they all do have their own voice for sure, but I don't know that any is necessary, you know, for the sound, especially if you get kind of a clean-ish pedal platform with the array of pedals that are out there these days. You can make any amp sound good and work for you within the genre, whether you want something that's tighter and more chuggy, or you want something big and open and fuzzy. I think you know, as long as you start with a clean-ish platform, you can get there.
There's an inherent, like, ritualistic quality to Doom, both in the sound and the aesthetic. You think that's intentional? And what about that resonates with people?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly is an aesthetic, and I think it's morphed a little bit over the years. You know, early on, right, the starting with Sabbath, kind of doing the evil thing, and into the '80s with Pentagram and even Saint Vitus and Trouble. Although Trouble had more of the Christian vibes going on a little bit. It's strange, but you had that kind of satanic ritualistic imagery and things like that. I just think that's just, you know, I don't know, teenage angst or what have you, similar to just metal in general, I think is that way. But Doom certainly has this more ritualistic vibe to it, right? You've got bands like Sun and stuff with the robes and whatnot, just taking it a little bit further. But I just think that just tends to, I don't know, like why did it always, it's always resonated with me, the darker side of things, right? And then there's also the stoner stuff, right? And just the drug culture and things of that nature. It's also been weaved in there. And then the kind of big amp walls of, you know, has kind of become over the past couple, I don't know, maybe 10 years or 15 years, where that's become the thing, is like, who can have the biggest, you know, the most amplifiers. And it's kind of, you know, I think bands like, you know, really, you look at Sleep with the Mad amps, and you think of Al and even early Ohm with like the big wall of green amps. And then Sleep when they returned, and Matt would have, you know, like 12 orange cabs on stage and things like that, to just push it even further, right? So it's kind of like this war of who can have the most and highest powered amps and the most cabs and the most speakers on stage. And perhaps, again, that's always been part of metal, you know, but with empty cabs and dummy cabs and things like that, whereas Doom bands aren't doing that, right? It's kind of all legitimate. So it's been interesting to watch that morph, though, at least for me, from the way I took it. It's always been somewhat interesting to me.
There's an aspect of Doom that seems to draw more of a spiritual pull. Its simplicity in its riffs, it gives space.
Yeah, I mean, I think slower tempos, right, kind of allows you to, like, some of it can be almost trying to put you into a trance or trance-like state, especially with some of the slower stuff. And not all Doom is slow, right? Like we were discussing Crowbar, and you know, there's certainly fast parts in Crowbar, and even bands like I Hate God, or I've heard it even discussed for Pentagram, where Victor Griffin himself was like, well, we weren't actually playing that slow, you know. But there's certain aspects and elements that are slower, and maybe just the way that the scales the common scales that are used, a lot of dissonance, and a lot of tension in there, which comes with, I think, some of the tension just as part of the use of the particular minor scales and just the timing, like how slow it can be played, and tension and release, and just the suspension of the tension, you know, the drawing it out. But yeah, it certainly has a different vibe, right? I feel like it's and really it's most of what I listen to in terms of since then. You know, we talked about going back to 2002 or what for me, and people will always ask me, like, what else do you listen to? And it's kind of like, sorry, this is it. Like, this has been it for a very long time. Besides, like, I do like a lot of traditional Chicago blues and things like that, which kind of play off the same elements, right? In some ways, you know, with the blues scale and the groove and But I don't listen to like a bunch of death metal or a bunch of thrash or, sure, I've listened to, I've had my time listening to Slayer and Judas Priest and things like that. But yeah, I'm not like a huge black metal or death metal fan, right? Like I'm pretty much a doom metal, sludge metal guy, with some classic rock and some blues,
So what do you think about doom metal's evolution? Has there been a prominent change?
Yeah, it certainly changed, from my eyes, from when I discovered it and how I discovered it. Obviously, some of these bands already existed, but I discovered it in early 2000s, and my gateway was Trouble and Saint Vitus and Pentagram and bands like that had a more classic 80s sound. Into the 90s, you had bands like Sleep show up on the scene and Electric Wizard, and they started using fuzz pedals, right? You had Matt with the Mad Amps and the Big Muff, and you had Electric Wizard playing the Mode 2 of the FZ2, the octave fuzz, and just kind of a different sound, tuning further down as well, right? Taking it from kind of the classic, I think St. Vitus is E flat and the Obsessed is E flat, and Pentagram was E flat, although they had some lower tunings as well. But I think maybe Trouble is in D, like just not that low, and then bands have kind of had this. There's been a tendency, obviously, to use more fuzz pedals and have a more bigger, bass-heavy, open sound and get slower as well with time. That's been an interesting evolution to see. I remember even when I first started hearing the other forms or the evolved forms of doom, it was like I was hesitant about it at first, perhaps, because of how all the bands that I started listening to, even if you think of sludge like Crowbar and I Hate God, like it's not super fuzzy. It's more just an overdriven, high gain distortion kind of sound. So that there's been that evolution for sure into and almost like this down tuning race of arms race of who can tune the lowest, and you end up with guys like in drop F and F standard like Bong Ripper, drop F like Conan, but bands tuned even lower and using bass sixes and doing more interesting things with just bass and multiple bass players and bass and drums, just this like race to see who can tune the lowest and use the most fuzz. And it's kind of interesting that way to have seen that evolution over the past, I guess, 20, 30 years.
Speaking of tunings, what are your thoughts on alternate tunings like Slowmatics?
Yeah, it's interesting to experiment with, especially if you've been playing in a certain tuning for a long time, switching to something octave tuning the way they use it. I had a guitar because I did a couple, some riffs and I think a lesson or two on some of their songs. And so you have to dedicate a guitar to it, right? Which is hard for some people. And it's, it's not just like throw some strings on it. You got to kind of cut the nut and you've got to intonate it for that tuning and totally reset up your guitar. But it can be pretty fun to experiment with those different tunings, like the Slowmatics tuning where it's, I think it's FF. And then it's like they take what would be a C sharp standard, but they drop the low C sharp to an F, and then they take the first string, they tune it to something else. I never got a handle on what they're doing that for. Actually, the first string, because I'm mostly hanging on the sixth string and playing the octave power chords, but. Even doing the pentagram thing, or Mastodon has done it where you take the sixth string and just tune it down to match the pitch of the second string, so your typical Root 5 power chord is an octave. Is interesting to do, and I think it can inspire some different ideas. And even going drop tuning to standard tuning, I think we all have positions that we like to play in, and as soon as you mix up the tuning a little bit, it gives you different intervals in those positions and can kind of just inspire different riffs and different structures and different just different intervals and things like that. So I think it's cool personally. I've got guitars in almost every tuning from F standard up to E standard. I mean, it's like Iommi would always in the old would always say like he would play power chords up above the 12th fret, whereas a lot of people wouldn't have done that at that time. They would have jumped down to the 5th string and done rooted on the 5th string, and he just thought it sounded heavier and more powerful and thicker if he played it up on the 12th fret. And obviously now it's pretty commonplace in doom for sure to be playing power chords on the 15th or 17th fret. I mean, there's so many Sleep songs and Electric Wizard songs and countless others that are played way up there on, but still sticking on the sixth string, you know. So it's just, and I will always remember, I think it was like Heaven and Hell was the article Tony wrote back in the early, again, it would have been around early 2000s, where I was reading Guitar World or Guitar Player or something. He had a recurring article called Heaven and Hell, and I can just remember him talking about things like that.
Hail Iomi. Let's hear about him.
Yeah, I mean, I discovered, I remember I was away, and I've told this story before, but one of my friends got the like NIB collection of bands doing Black Sabbath covers, and there was like Sepultura on there doing Symptom of the Universe, and I think Megadeth doing Paranoid, and you know, Pantera was on there doing Planet Caravan maybe. But it was this collection of just more modern bands doing Sabbath songs. And I can remember listening to that and being like, wow, all these songs are incredible, you know? And then the same friend had like No Effects doing Iron Man or something. And I can remember just listening to that and being like, well, I gotta figure out this band. Like, what is this band Black Sabbath? Because I had heard it even in the Danzig stuff, you know, like this, like, oh, they've got Black Sabbath influences, but I never listened to Sabbath, and I wouldn't have known Paranoid. Like, I wouldn't have known Iron Man in like 1999 or 2000. Like, I would not have known those songs, which seems silly to say. But it's not what my parents listened to at all, and so I wasn't exposed to it at all. But I went away for that summer, and I was at a CD store, and I remember buying. We sold our souls for rock and roll, and Black Sabbath, the compilation there, and the Ozzy. It was like the Ozman Cometh, but it included like the Black Sabbath basement tracks, which was like, I think it had War Pigs and Black Sabbath and Fairies Wear Boots or something, like, but like outtakes or alternate takes, demos probably. And I can remember just going home and listening to those two, just being mind blown, right? Listening to all those songs for the first time, hearing Children of the Grave for the first time, hearing just Black Sabbath, like, and by the actual band, I had maybe heard covers, right? Like, I think Rob Zombie did Children of the Grave on that compilation. But going home and thinking Tony's name was Tony Lomi, and telling my friends, like, you got to hear this Tony Lomi guy. He's amazing. Like, he's like, the riffs are incredible. His solos are amazing. And I was really drawn to just the basic, like, classic rock style blues soloing that Iomi was doing, because we would have been listening to more like metal stuff and John Christ and Danzig or Hanneman and Slayer or something, which just seemed way more metal. So I hadn't heard enough classic rock even up to that point to recognize that Iomi was just playing like pentatonic blues type stuff mostly. But I just fell in love with his playing, his tone, his riffs, and Ozzy too, and Geezer, you know, obviously, and Bill, and the whole band. So that band has stuck with me forever. They will probably always be my favorite band. Certainly what I cite as my favorite band, even though they may not be the band I listen to most these days. I'm still always inspired by what they did and have done.
Are there any newer bands that you're excited about?
Yeah, I think, you know, I've been fortunate through what I've done with Does It Doom and even with Woodrite to just have started to get to know a lot of the more newer bands and younger bands, up and coming bands. I don't know if that's because they've watched the channel and got to know me and wanted to try out some of the gear or what, but you know, it's like we're both going to see Witch Pit and Mean Green tonight here in Charlotte, which are two of my favorite up-and-coming bands and being from this area, and I know all those guys, and they're just putting out really great music, you know. Like I mentioned, there's Blackstaff and a band called Mycon in Portland that I'm really into, and just getting to see the whole scene, right? Like, we've got Cosmic Reaper here in Charlotte, which is an awesome doom band, and I got to run a festival last summer with them, or sponsor the festival and help put on the festival at the Milestone Club here called Seismic Summer, and that was the second festival. We're doing it again this year, it's just all kind of, you know, more smaller local bands and bands from the region, but even stretching kind of up and down the East Coast at this point. We had last year, I think, Warlong from Texas came, Satan Satyrs headlined last year, and then the year before Bronco headlined. Yeah, so I'm into the evolving and the growing scene, and you know, it's really cool to get to see our gear and our pedals and guitars used on stage by some of these younger, newer bands. That's really fulfilling for all of us. I'm grateful to have gotten to meet and check out a lot of these bands, and cool to just see the continued evolution of the genre.
Do you think Doom will always be an underground movement?
I think it's certainly less underground today than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago, you know? So I would say no. I mean, relatively speaking, yes. But you can watch it continue to get bigger and bigger. And that's kind of almost what prompted me to start the channel. Started making videos truly dedicated to Doom probably in 2017 or something like that. And I could just see like Facebook groups were getting bigger. There seemed to be more interest in the scene. And like I said, I'd been listening to Doom since 2002 or something. And it certainly seemed a lot bigger in 2017 than it seemed in 2002. And to me, it seems a lot bigger in 2025 than it seemed in 2017. You know, like their Facebook groups might have had 5,000 people, now have 25,000 people, or, you know, and so it's just, I think the community gets larger. You see this hype and excitement around like a band like Acid Bath reuniting, who I'm going to see tomorrow night, one of my favorite bands ever. And just, but how big they've gotten, right? It's like they ended in 1997, probably with a very small fan base. And now in 2025, they have what I would consider probably a larger fan base than they even realized. You know, it's like they're selling out shows all over the country. You know, big draw for festivals, and obviously people in Europe are dying for them to go over there. So I think it's just signs that the scene is growing and just continuing to get bigger and bigger. Will it be mainstream? Probably not. It probably shouldn't be. But I think within the underground, it will continue to become a bigger and bigger thing.
So you started Does It Doom around, what, 2017, somewhere around there?
Yeah.
Did you expect it to take off as it has?
No. There was no plan, right? It's like, I certainly never envisioned myself owning a guitar company or owning a pedal company or really making any products. That really wasn't my goal at all. I just, around 2017, like I said, I saw it seemed to be more interest in it. And really what's funny, which just brings it all full circle with what we do now, is I felt like Sleep and Electric Wizard had gotten to be really big, but there were no lessons on how to play their songs on YouTube. Or at least not any detailed lessons, nothing that was decent quality where someone was really trying to put forward a good product. And so I just thought, well, shit, I'm going to teach some Sleep songs. And I remember strangely thinking back like, oh, well, I'm going to teach some of the newer songs because nobody's going to know how to play Leagues Beneath or how to play The Clarity, or, you know, people probably know how to play Dragonaut. And so I just started doing lessons. Like I think Leagues Beneath might have been the first one. And I was expecting people to be like, fuck you, like, get off of here, what are you doing? And maybe I got a little bit of that, but man, I really got a ton of support, you know, and just with like a shitty setup, like I think I had a lav mic on and like some sort of speaker up there, and I was just like playing, but trying to take it seriously. I got really into the blues in Chicago blues and like 2012 and 2013, 14 was, and had joined these online memberships, Texas Blues Alley with Anthony Stauffer, and Learning Guitar Now with John Tuggle. Both are amazing teachers and like amazing players. And just watch them, how they formatted their lessons and how they explain things. And I thought they just did a really great job. And so my goal was to take their kind of structure and the way they did lessons and presented things and apply it to doom metal and put together a more quality product than was probably out there. Again, with no real goal. Like I just wanted to teach the songs. Like I thought it would be cool. I thought it would be, people might like it, and maybe I could get 5,000 followers on YouTube or something, which is an arbitrary, like, oh, it'd be cool if 5,000 people followed this. And so I just started doing that. You know, I just started doing lessons. And like I said, people were like, keep going, do more. Like, show us how to play Dope Throne, teach us how to play Sleep, teach us how to play Electric Wizard, teach us how to play more High on Fire, right? Because I started with Sleep. So they were like, teach us High on Fire. So I think I did like 10,000 Years in Baghdad. And then I did Satanic Rites of Drugula, and I did maybe Witch Cult Today or something like that. And it just the encouragement. I got so much encouragement. I can say, like, if I had got a bunch of negativity, I may have just stopped. You know, I don't know. I may have, right? Like if people were like, fuck this guy, I may have just stopped. But I got just a tremendous outpouring of support and people saying, please do more, throwing out requests, and then asking me, oh, demo some gear. Would you try this fuzz pedal? Would you do that? And quickly it started rolling into demoing gear, and I had pedal companies contact. At first, I just started buying stuff that people were asking, like, oh, it'd be cool to hear this, and so I would buy it and demo it. And then that quickly turned into companies just offering to send me stuff to demo. And so we were doing that, and that started to get really big for me in a relative sense, right? Like, but it was growing faster than I imagined it would. I think the videos that really took off for the channel were like, I did an early demo of the FC2 Hyper Fuzz, the Boss pedal versus the Behringer SF300, and compared them and showed just how close they were to each other. And that video really took off. And then I did a lesson for Dope Throne by Electric Wizard, and that really took off. And again, I just think they just didn't exist. Right now there's probably many lessons for both. There's probably dozens of demos between those two pedals comparing them, but at the time there was nothing. And so I was just kind of the first one there. And so it all kind of took off because there's nothing else. Now there's more people doing demos, well, way more people doing demos, and I still, for whatever reason, not a lot of people jumped into the lesson thing. Which is still what I like to do the most of all of it. Like, I still love to put together lessons, and I still try and do one a month. And I've actually backed off from doing demos and stuff, because again, when I started, it really, I love gear, but I don't love demoing gear so much. But I love teaching, and I love doing the lessons. So that's what I lean into more these days. You know, it's like we've talked about, you've kind of got to be true to yourself and what you want to do with all this stuff. Like, as a content creator, you can do anything you want, but it's easy to burn out if you're doing things you don't like, you know. And if you're just doing random pedal that some company wants to pay you to do a demo for, it just feels ingenuine. It just doesn't feel good. Like, you're not happy making the video. You're like dreading having to sit down and do it. Whereas if it's a piece of gear you're super pumped about, that you just want to do, like, I don't do any paid demos on the channel or anything like that, and I never really have. I will say I did like one or two, and it just didn't feel good. Like, it just, people didn't watch it. You could probably tell, like, it wasn't something I was super stoked about doing. And so now it's just basically shit that I really like, and I want to demo and feel inspired to demo, I will. I will not get paid to demo. I just won't. I don't want to. I'm continuing to teach the songs I like, you know, and again, it's been like that too. People might request shit, but you'll see a lot of the recurring bands on the channel, right, that I just cover over and over. It's because that's what I listen to. And sometimes I'll dip out and do stuff because it gets requested a lot, but it's still my favorite thing to just pick a song that I love and break it and just sit down for a few hours with it and learn it and get it tabbed out, and and then just present it to everybody. So.
What's one piece of advice you'd give to a guitarist trying to find their own unique doom tone?
I always do like to advise people to start with something they like. You know, it helps to kind of tone chase on something that that inspires you. That's like, okay, well, this is kind of what I want to sound like. I think to just have a truly unique, like, anybody who's saying they have a tone that is inspired by no one and is their own, like, that's got to kind of be bullshit to some degree, right? Because we all pull inspiration from somewhere, and some people wear it on their sleeve and really, you know, as we discussed earlier, you know, really hone in on a certain sound, and I don't think it's necessarily great to just try to, okay, learn all the pedals and amps this guy uses and just get it all, and I don't think that's the key. But I think you can borrow elements and you can start somewhere, you know, maybe dig into, okay, what is the core to this person's sound that they've used over the years. It's hard. Like, a guy like Pike uses so many, like, he was fairly stable with the gear he used for a few decades, or, you know, from the 90s into the early 2000s, but then he started getting him pedals, you know, and now he uses his pedal board. You see it change like almost on a daily basis, you know. Certainly show to show and stuff, you know, he'll change shit in and out and try different stuff, and that's because he just wants to keep evolving and trying different stuff. Like, it's interesting, as I've gotten to know him, like, he's always just trying different things and doing different things, and not really wanting to go backwards at all, you know. And some guys just have the same sound and they take it and use it forever. Like Kirk and Crowbar has been like that Randall head and the Boss MT2 and a guitar with EMGs. And, you know, he's run that forever. And that's like, you know, if you want to start there, you can kind of start there and sound like Crowbar, but then you kind of need to take it and move it and point it in the direction. Like, you're never going to sound exactly the same anyways. It's all going to come down to what your influences are versus what his influences are. Getting to know some of these guys better that I grew up were my heroes, you know, and now are my friends. And getting to ask them all sorts of shit and just see where some of their ideas may have come from that I would never have imagined or known about, period.
You have any advice for musicians to grow their own content platforms?
Yeah, it's be prepared to work really hard. It's just, it's difficult. I should say it's kind of, it's kind of simple, but not easy. Like it's simple. Like you've got to make content on a very regular basis, and post basically as much as possible. And people will see that and make fun of it. Like I follow Matt Bacon. Do you know Matt? And I love him. He's a good buddy of mine. And people in the comments will, and sometimes like pick fun at like shit he's saying, but he's kind of saying the right thing. Like you kind of have to get, and it sucks for some musicians who don't want any part of it. They just want to focus on their art and do the art. One of the main only ways you're going to get noticed these days is by growing the social following and growing a following on social. So you kind of got to lean into it, learn how to make content, learn what works, look at your inspirations and see if you can mimic some of what they're doing. It's just hard. It just really is. Like I wish there was a different answer, but it's like, it's hard for me to make videos and still stay inspired to make videos that I want to make and just the time dedication required. But if you can master it and you can kind of find what can work for you and maybe get some different video formats that will work, the days of just like posting pictures and garnering a huge following are largely gone. Like you need to be able to create video content. And you need to kind of do it at scale so that you're posting a lot. So for me, I've focused on, you see my setup is simplistic. I focus on just being able to create things fast, and I don't worry too much about production quality. I don't know that it matters that much. I think providing value is certainly a way, right? Like I could start a band today from scratch and have a pretty decent following, even if we sucked. Like, it's like because I have built this fan base, people would at least check it out. And sometimes I look at that and just see like if you just did gear demos and content and things related to the niche that weren't even necessarily focused on your band, like the gear demo space and something Thomas in Witch Pit has done. He's done gear demos and I think has a following on YouTube with some really sweet gear demos that he's done. And I think that's going to bring attention to his band. Like it just is, because people in the gear space, the music nerds, the guys who are always the first fans of a new local band are going to be guys in the scene, right? Who are kind of music nerds and gear guys. And so I always, if I did have to focus in on one thing, it's just like, I think there's a lot to be said for kind of doing the demo thing and just kind of being more part of the community, and you become a face that people see and get to know and like and trust. And I don't know, like I said, it's hard. I've gone through phases where I try to put out a video a day, and I'm trying to just make even if it's low production, me out on my deck, like talking about a guitar versus me in here, multi-tracking guitars and shit, that's gonna take forever. I try to still post once a day on the platforms if I can. And really, the more you can do, if you can get 4 videos posted a day, you're gonna grow faster than if you get 1 video posted a day, which is gonna grow faster than if you post once a week. Finding a way to connect. Some guys do little skits and comedy and things like that. And as long as you can pull it back into the music, can do it. But it's a blessing and a curse because it's free media. You can kind of do it, but it's also hard because it requires a lot of energy.
Lightning round. What's the best Doom riff of all time?
Dope Smoker intro.
Most underrated Doom band?
Witchfinder General.
Favorite Doom vocalist of all time?
Ozzy Osbourne. One
piece of gear you'd never sell?
The SG I got from Matt, the Nicotine Child. Matt Pike's Nicotine Child.
Your absolute dream amp, no budget constraints?
Green Matt Amp GT120 Master Volume from the 90s. That one.
Best Doom festival or show experience you've ever had?
Best Doom festival was the Snowblind Fest in Atlanta a few years ago. It was absolutely awesome. We had High on Fire, you had The Obsessed, you had Weed Eater. It was just awesome. So that was the best festival I've ever attended.
Fuzz or distortion?
Man, it depends on the time of day.
Sono or Electric Wizard?
Electric Wizard.
Tube amp or solid state?
Tube, no question.
Boss HM2 or Big Muff?
Big Muff.
Fender Jazzmaster or Gibson SG?
SG. Not even a question.
Pedals or plug straight in?
Probably pedals.
You get your own version of Mount Rushmore. You have 4 spots.
Yeah.
People place things, ideas, whatever. Who goes on there and in what order?
Man, Iommi goes first, right? Let's do a Mount Rushmore of amps. I think we'd put a green Matt Amp GT120, a Sun Model T, a Laney Supergroup, and I guess the Hiwatt DR103. This was really fun, man. Thank you.
So what's next for Steve Reis and Does It Doom? Got anything on the horizon you can tease?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of cool things coming on the pedal side and the guitar side. I mean, everything continues to evolve with the pedal company Does It Doom and the guitar company Woodrite Guitars. We're continuing to, but we've got release of basses coming this year, which has been a big thing. Our Graver and Warlord bass are going to come out later this year, which people have been just and rightfully so, like clamoring for a bass. Starting a guitar company from scratch with 2 dudes is hard. You know, you see the operation, right? I'm like running things out of my garage. Just me and my partner Shay at Woodbine, and that's it. And my buddy Bill, who comes to help with QC sometimes. So it's just a slow process, slower than we want, but we're continuing to push forward. It's a huge passion of ours. Like we said, like if I didn't have this, like I don't know what I would do, right? It's like this is my passion and this is what I want to do. So we've got some new models, new finishes, exciting new artist collaboration opportunities and things like that. So trying to make the best import series guitars we can in terms of just like specs. We want the specs to be top notch. And again, it's like an evolution. We're just chipping away at it, making everything better bit by bit as we understand what's available, the process. You know, you have to go through prototyping, which takes time. And so there's something to be said for still having speed and having new products that maybe aren't perfect. They always say, and to go back to content creation, it goes for product development, like done is better than perfect, right? You've got to kind of get your best effort out there and then continue to hone and refine and make it better over time. And I think we've certainly done that on the guitar and pedal side of things. With the pedals, we've got a bunch of circuits in development, probably 3 or 4. We work with Nick Williams, formerly of Dunwich Amps, who is our lead circuit designer. So Nick's the best. He's the best. When it comes to analog dirt, no one is better, in my opinion. So I get to work with the best there ever was. And we've got a whole bunch of potential collab opportunities that we've talked to some really great bands that we've been fans of forever about doing some stuff. And so we're just kind of in the prototyping phase. We've got a new pedal coming out next month called the Walpurgis Volume 2, which is an expanded edition of our original Walpurgis, which was like a Laney supergroup blended with the Dallas Rangemaster to do that kind of classic Black Sabbath Iomi tone. So we did it as a 1-knobber. And now we're going to do it as like an 8-knob full preamp, kind of like our Baghdad. It's awesome. So that pedal has been long out of production, the original one, and people have hounded us to bring it back. But the reason it's been so delayed is we've been fine tuning this Volume 2, which is gonna just floor people. It's amazing. So I'm really excited about it. As a big fan of Iomi and Laney and Rangemasters, clearly. It rules. So those are the kind of the new things. And obviously, like I said on the channel, we're just continuing to try and put out cool lessons and content and helpful content for people to help people get better at playing doom metal guitar. I mean, that's what we're in. That's what we do.
And if people wanted to find more about you and Does It Doom and Woodrite, where can they go?
Yeah, you can find us, check out Woodrite Guitars at woodwriteguitars.com and on Instagram at Woodrite Guitars. You can check out our custom shop at Woodbine Guitars if you want to see some beautiful North American made instruments. And then Does It Doom on basically every platform at Does It Doom on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok. And our website, doesitdoom.com, if you want to check out some pedals, pedal boards, or Woodrite guitars as well.
Thanks, Steve.
Yeah,
I really appreciate this. It's been a great talk.
Yeah, it really has. Thank you so much for letting me do this.